The script for this film could have remained stuck in development hell forever, with no hope of adaptation, but instead it turned into one of the funniest comedies of the 90s, earning hundreds of millions of dollars. The journey that began with John Hughes's failed project and endless rejections from actors ended in Jim Carrey's triumph and the birth of a true comedy phenomenon. Movies Inside Out presents Dumb and Dumber, the 1994 Farrelly brothers film about two incredibly stupid friends who set off on a crazy journey across America. Why didn't agents show the script to their actor clients? How did Carrey's fee jump from $700,000 to $7 million in just 1 week? Why did Jeff Daniels almost ruin his career? And how is the movie connected to Stephen King's The Shining? About this and more, you'll learn in our new video. Ready? Then let's begin. The creation story. Few could have guessed that one of the main comedy films of the 90s was born from what seemed like a failed project. The history of Dumb and Dumber didn't begin with the Farrelly brothers, as many believe, but with the legendary John Hughes, the man who gave the world planes, trains, and automobiles, Home Alone, and many other hits. In the early 1980s, after the success of Vacation and Mr. Mom, where Hughes worked as a screenwriter, Universal Pictures offered him a lucrative contract. And that's how cult teen comedies like 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off were born. At that time, Hughes had plenty of ideas, so he passed some of his drafts to other screenwriters for further development. One of those drafts turned out to be Dumb and Dumber, though back then it was called Ski Nuts. It was a 50-page story about the adventures of two very dumb guys named Harry and Lloyd at a ski resort. The problem was, those pages had no coherent plot, just two idiots running around getting into ridiculous situations. In the late 80s, Hughes met brothers Peter and Bobby Farrelly and screenwriter Bennett Yellen, who were then reworking other people's scripts and handed them those notes saying, "Come back with a finished movie." The team took the challenge and created a full script with a proper storyline. Hughes liked the result, and it seemed the project would get the green light. But then the unexpected happened. Hughes's deal with Universal Pictures fell through. His latest works weren't bringing the studio the box office numbers it wanted, and all of Hughes's future projects were shelved. Dumb and Dumber went into development hell, where scripts gathered dust on shelves for years with no hope of adaptation. However, the Farrellys and Yellen didn't give up. They truly believed in their project, and eventually worked up the courage to ask Hughes for permission to try doing something with the film on their own.
What more could two single guys ask for?
How about some food? I swallowed a big June bug when we were driving. I'm not really hungry.
He agreed, but gave them one condition. His name could not appear in the promotional materials, otherwise they would have to pay a $1 million penalty, since Hughes's projects were still under Universal's rights. And so, one of Hollywood's strangest secrets was born. For many years, no one knew about John Hughes's role in creating this comedy. Producer Charles Wessler, with whom the Farrellys had already worked on television, believed in the project and decided to get involved. But what happened next turned into a real nightmare for everyone. The script was sent to different studios, and they didn't just receive polite rejections, they got outright demolitions. Studio executives would call Wessler and angrily ask why he was sending them such crap. The most interesting part came later, when Peter Farrelly started talking with actors who had supposedly turned down roles in the film. It turned out many of them had never even seen the script. Their agents had filtered out the project at the title stage. One agent even admitted, "I can't give my client a script called Dumb and Dumber. He'd fire me." So the creators tried a trick and renamed the project Power Tool Is Not a Toy, to make it sound more serious and modern. And you know what? People actually started reading it. Soon, producer Brad Crevoy joined the project, and production finally began. But even greater challenges lay ahead for the team. Casting. Finding the perfect actors to play Harry and Lloyd turned out to be an almost impossible task. Imagine this. About 100 actors turned down the role of Lloyd. Among them were stars like Steve Martin, Martin Short, Ben Stiller, Eddie Murphy, Mike Myers, Adam Sandler, and even Gary Oldman. The Farrelly brothers even considered pairing up Corey Feldman and Corey Haim, known for their teen roles, but the bosses at New Line Cinema, which had been brought in as the distributor, decided that they were no longer as popular as before. Jim Carrey was immediately interested in the project, but at that time, the Farrellys had no idea who he was. When the producers first mentioned his name, they only said he was a white guy from the sketch show In Living Color. But when the Farrellys saw Ace Ventura, they realized Carrey was exactly who they needed. By then, something incredible had happened. Ace Ventura had topped the US box office, and Carrey's salary instantly jumped from $700,000 to $7 million. That was nearly half the film's entire budget, but the producers decided it was worth it. Moreover, for the first time in his career, Jim was offered a role without an audition.
Got room for one more if you still want to go to Aspen.
Where did you find that?
Some kid back in town. Traded the van for it, straight up.
It was the success of Ace Ventura, directed by first-time filmmaker Tom Shadyac, that convinced Jim to take on the role of Lloyd. He wanted to repeat his success by giving another pair of newcomers a chance. Interestingly, Lloyd's famous chipped tooth wasn't makeup. It was Carrey's real tooth, broken in a childhood fight. By the time of filming, he had it capped, but he had the cap removed for the role. Finding a partner for Carrey was just as dramatic. Nicolas Cage, who was offered the role of Harry, tried to demand an extra $2 million on top of his salary. The studio refused to deal with such appetites and turned him down. Later, Cage claimed he had declined the role himself in favor of the drama Leaving Las Vegas. But who knows what really happened? Other contenders for Harry included Rob Lowe, Chris Elliott, and Chris Farrelly. But fate took another turn. Jeff Daniels came to the Farrellys' attention thanks to an old commercial for an anti-diarrheal medication. However, the studio had no desire to cast Daniels. At the time, he was known exclusively for dramatic roles. To scare him off, they offered him a laughable $50,000 by Hollywood standards.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
What happened next deserves a film of its own. Daniels' agents frantically called him the night before his costume fitting, begging him not to go to the shoot and threatening to terminate his contract.
Get out of here! You
They told him outright that he was making the worst mistake of his career, that he would ruin his reputation as a serious actor, and that all the glory would go to Jim Carrey. But Daniel stood his ground and replied that if it was a mistake, it was his to make. As we know, the actor made the right call, and his fee eventually rose to $750,000.
My God, you poor guy, does it hurt?
I'm fine. I paid the fee for you.
Meanwhile, Halle Berry, who was offered 2 roles at once, Mary Swanson and Beth Jordan, refused to participate in the project. In the end, Beth was played by Victoria Rowell.
My astrologer told me that I really should stay away from accident-prone guys, so,
Well, you know,
And Mary was played by Lauren Holly, who had previously turned down a role in Ace Ventura, where she was replaced by Courtney Cox.
Thank you, Lloyd. Good luck with your worms.
In an early draft of the script, Mary's husband was supposed to be played by Mel Gibson. The joke was that pathetic Lloyd Christmas couldn't dream of competing with him. But the idea was dropped, and the role went to little-known Brad Lockerman.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Woody Harrelson, Peter Farrelly's former roommate at the start of his career, might have appeared in the film, but everything was decided over a game of pool. The rule was simple. If Harrelson won, he wouldn't be in the movie. If Farrelly won, Woody would get a role. Harrelson won, and missed his chance to be part of the cult comedy. Harlan Williams originally auditioned for Harry, but ended up making his film debut in a small yet memorable role as the motorcycle cop.
tic-tac, sir?
Get the hell out of here.
Baseball player Roger Clemens was supposed to play the trucker Seabass, but he couldn't combine filming with his sports career, and he was replaced by Canadian hockey player Cam Neely.
Who's the dead man that hit me with the salt shaker?
Amusingly, this character, again played by Neely, later appeared in another Farrelly Carrey collaboration, the comedy Me, Myself, and Irene. The villain, Nicholas Andre, was played by comedian Charles Rocket.
What is this? What is this? Where's all the money?
That's as good as money, sir. Those are IOUs.
While his accomplice, J.P. Shea, was portrayed by model and TV host Karen Duffy.
How can anybody whack a bird with the cork?
These guys aren't just anybody. They're good.
Another of Andre's henchmen, Joe Mentalino, was played by character actor Mike Starr.
On us for weeks.
What do you say?
Gas, man. How the hell do they know that I got gas?
Mary's stepmother, Helen Swanson, was played by Terry Garr, an Oscar nominee for Tootsie.
Cito, it's fabulous. Really, I love a man with a sense of humor. Really.
And Detective Dale was played by Felton Perry, known from the RoboCop franchise.
Poison? No doubt about it. We found these next to the body.
Perhaps the most touching story is tied to young Brady Bloom, who played the blind boy Billy. Only he and one other child were invited to the second audition, and as soon as Bloom delivered his signature line,
Pretty bird. Yeah, can you say pretty bird? Pretty bird.
the entire room burst out laughing, and one of the film's most memorable moments was born. In the end, the casting of this comedy became a perfect example of how the most unexpected choices can lead to the best results. The filming process. The start of filming. Dumb and Dumber became a real test of endurance for Jeff Daniels. Imagine this. It's the first day you're shooting the scooter scene with Jim Carrey himself, and then the star of the film disappears. They shot the frozen tongue scene and the snowball fight. But as the week was coming to an end, Jim was still nowhere to be seen. That's when Daniels realized, even though he had officially been offered the role, the audition was still going on. The studio wanted to make sure he was truly right for the job. Luckily, Daniels' talent spoke for itself. On Monday morning, as he was getting into makeup, Jim Carrey walked into the dressing room, patted him on the shoulder, and said, "Just keep doing what you're doing. They love you." From that moment on, the two actors struck up a friendship that continues to this day. The atmosphere on set was truly special. Karen Duffy called it the best filming experience of her life. As a director, Peter Farrelly set an incredibly lighthearted and friendly tone for the whole production, making time for everyone involved. This atmosphere spread to everyone, from the stars to the youngest assistants.
Where are we gonna go?
I'll tell you where. Someplace warm.
As for the locations, the filmmakers ran into some unexpected obstacles. Originally, they planned to shoot in Aspen, but the upscale resort town demanded too high a fee for filming rights. They had to look for alternatives. Many scenes were shot in nearby Breckenridge and Park City, Utah, while the snowy sequences were filmed at Copper Mountain in Colorado. One particularly interesting story involves the famous Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, used for the scenes set in Danbury. This hotel is known for inspiring Stephen King to write The Shining. Jim Carrey decided to spend the night in room 217, the same room King once stayed in. But what happened next remains a mystery. About 3 hours after going to bed, Carrey ran out of the room and asked for a different one. To this day, he refuses to reveal what happened that night. What do you think? Did something truly terrifying happen, or was Carrey just playing a prank? Filming also had its real-life hiccups. Production had to pause for an entire week when Jim Carrey needed surgery to remove a gallstone. The real magic, though, happened during improvisations. According to the director, about 15% of the movie was improvised right on set. The famous line,
No way. That's great.
We landed on the moon!
was completely spontaneous, sparked by a photo Carrey noticed on a bar wall. And the most annoying sound in the world scene wasn't in the script at all.
Want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Jeff Daniels' expression of genuine shock says it all. The most unexpected improvisation came when Lloyd walks out of a store and cheerfully greets two guys holding big gulps. Their puzzled looks were genuine. They weren't extras at all. They were just random passers-by watching the shoot. Peter Farrelly instantly knew it was comedy gold and kept the moment in the film. To create Harry's look, Jeff Daniels had to make some sacrifices. He wasn't allowed to use conditioner, blow dry his hair, or even comb it, all to achieve that perfectly disheveled style. Film buffs can also spot a few Easter eggs. For instance, when Lloyd tricks Seabass and his buddies, he says he saw that trick in a movie, referring to the 1986 film Something Wild, where Jeff Daniels' character pulled off a similar con.
Half-mile down the road and slit his throat. It was a good one.
At the dinner party scene, when Lloyd looks at a passing woman and says he'd like to eat her liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti, it's a direct nod to the Silence of the Lambs.
Eat her liver with some fava beans and a nice bottle of Chianti.
Even the characters' names, Harry and Lloyd, are a tribute to silent film legend Harold Lloyd. By blending careful planning with lively improvisation, the creators of Dumb and Dumber captured that unpredictable energy, which made the film a cult classic. Movie mistakes and errors. Now let's take a look behind the scenes of this comedy masterpiece and go through some of the mistakes and bloopers you may not have noticed while watching. Chameleon tights. When Lloyd bumps into Mary on the hotel staircase, she's wearing thin black tights. But once they're in the room, she's suddenly in gray, much thicker ones.
We learned a little something about each other today, didn't we?
Yeah, you said it, pal.
Acrobat hands. Lloyd grabs the bartender with his left hand, but in the very next shot, he's holding him with his right. Magic cigar. When Lloyd is trying on tuxedos, Harry has a short cigar in his mouth, but in the next frame, it has mysteriously grown longer. Betraying reflection. When Lloyd falls while trying to catch the plane, an Asian man can't help but smile. You can see it in the reflection of the glass, yet when the camera cuts to his face directly, his expression is perfectly serious. Double tongue. In the famous frozen tongue scene, you can actually see Harry's real tongue right under the stretched fake one. Mysterious hand. When Harry and Lloyd are leaving Rhode Island, someone can be seen pulling back the curtain behind Harry's head. Intentional mistakes. The opening credits are full of spelling errors. For example, produced instead of produced, directed instead of directed. Of course, these weren't accidental. It's a brilliant nod to the stupidity of the main characters. Still, these little slip-ups don't spoil the impression of the Farrelly brothers film one bit. Maybe you spotted something we missed? Share it in the comments. Deleted scenes. The story of Dumb and Dumber could have been completely different if audiences had originally seen everything the creators had planned. For many years, fans of the comedy had no idea they were watching a trimmed version. The most disgusting scenes and risque dialogues were mercilessly cut by censors to secure a family-friendly PG-13 rating. Only in 2006 did New Line Cinema finally release the uncut version. And what viewers saw shocked even the most devoted fans.
What are you both gonna do now?
Oh, I don't know. We have no talents and we don't really fit into society.
Maybe we'll be film critics.
Perhaps the most brutal scene involves poor PT the parakeet. In the theatrical version, his death happens off-screen. But in the full cut, the camera shows Mentalino coldly snapping the bird's neck, with sound effects making the moment even more disturbing.
You sold my dead bird to a blind kid? Lloyd, what are you...
There was also a full extra scene explaining how the blind boy Billy learned the truth about his purchase. He meets Mentalino and Shay and asks if anything happened to his bird. Mentalino casually tosses the dead parakeet aside, while Shay, with an angelic smile, tells the boy that Petey simply flew south for the winter.
I just thought he was real quiet.
This scene emphasized the villain's cynicism, but never made it into any released cut. In the roadside diner, audiences were spared an even nastier surprise. When the trucker Seabass spits into Harry's burger, the theatrical cut politely shifts the camera to Lloyd, leaving only the sound. The uncut version doesn't hold back, showing the spit land directly in the food. Another cut moment features a waitress. When Harry complains there are no bubbles in his cola, she grabs the glass and blows into the drink through a straw to make them. But the real treasures were found in the honeymoon suite. A long dialogue between Lloyd and Harry was cut for its crude toilet humor. Lloyd shamelessly admits what he'd do with Harry if he were a woman.
There's only one thing that could make this moment any better.
What's that?
If you had a nice set of knockers.
And the two eavesdrop on and comment about the intimate noises of the couple next door. Clearly, this didn't fit a family rating. The mystery of Shay's disappearance from the road trip also had an explanation in the uncut cut. While the villains wait for the hero's van, Shay steps into the bushes to relieve herself. The most provocative moment came at the gas station restroom, where Seabass corners Lloyd. In the uncut version, the trucker exclaims,
Oh man, you gotta be shitting me.
while Lloyd nervously repeats,
Find a happy place. Find a happy place.
Bass, dropping his pants, adds, I'll show you something happy. Later, as Harry drives, he teases Lloyd about what he might have been doing in there. Aspen also had an extended moment before Harry's date with Mary. Lloyd discreetly points out that his friend's new ski suit leaves a noticeable bulge, then jokes it's too small for anyone to notice. That's why in the next scene, Harry shows up in red shorts over his outfit. Around the same time, Lloyd realizes that if he married Mary, her name would become Merry Christmas. The laxative gag also had a raunchier version. Instead of just hearing Harry's screams through the bathroom door, the uncut cut shows him opening the window and dumping the contents of the broken toilet outside in graphic detail. Even the iconic frozen tongue scene had an extended version. Shay is shown on a nearby slope trying to shoot helpless Harry, but she misses and accidentally hits a passing mime. Another example of the Farrelly's trademark dark humor that never made it to release. An entire subplot with Bobby, Mary's kidnapped husband, locked inside a wooden crate, was filmed but cut out entirely. There were also two alternate endings, both scrapped. In one, Lloyd and Harry turned down jobs as bellhops for hotel manager Barney. In another, Barney offers them work as babysitters for his grandson, who, in a twist, turns out to be the blind boy Billy. Jim Carrey flatly refused to film one more alternate ending where Harry and Lloyd actually board the bus with the bikini girls. In the end, the filmmakers chose the simple sunset walkaway. Interestingly, audiences in different countries saw different cuts. All UK releases removed the scene where Lloyd returns to the newsstand and calls after the old lady who robbed him. It could only be found on a Dutch VHS and an Australian DVD, a real rarity for collectors.
I got robbed by a sweet old lady on a motorized cart.
Because of all these edits, audiences for years only saw a softened version of the outrageous comedy the Farrelly brothers had envisioned. The full version truly reveals a much darker layer of absurdity and black humor. Worldwide recognition. Before reaching theaters, Dumb and Dumber went through several test screenings, something that became a tradition for the Farrelly brothers. They called the process painful but necessary, since it was the only way to know whether what you shot was actually funny or not. The film premiered on December 6, 1994. It instantly dominated the US box office, grossing $16.4 million during its opening weekend and taking the #1 spot. But that was just the beginning of its triumph. In the end, the film made $127 million domestically and a staggering $247 million worldwide, becoming the holiday season's biggest hit. All this with a budget of only $17 million. For Jim Carrey, this success was historic. He became the first actor to have 3 consecutive films hit #1 at the US box office in the same year. Along with Dumb and Dumber, those films were The Mask and Ace Ventura. 1994 can truly be called Jim Carrey's year in world cinema.
You love me. You really love me.
But what did critics think of this insane comedy? Surprisingly, the reactions were mostly positive. Reviewers called it outrageously stupid, but at the same time admitted it was hilariously funny, praising the actors' performances. Legendary critic Roger Ebert's response was particularly telling. Overall, he was lukewarm on the film, but confessed that he laughed so hard during the dead parakeet scene that he actually felt embarrassed. "If the whole movie had been that funny, I would have required hospitalization," he remarked. The reactions of fellow actors were just as unexpected. Jeff Daniels once shared an amazing story of meeting Clint Eastwood on a golf course. Expecting a scolding, Daniels was stunned when Eastwood admitted the bathroom scene reminded him of one of his own dates. Dustin Hoffman even phoned Jim Carrey after watching, telling him it was the most genuine and heartfelt portrayal of friendship he had ever seen on screen. The film didn't sweep awards season, but it did win a couple of MTV Movie Awards. Carrey took home Best Comic Performance. He and Lauren Holly shared Best Kiss. And Carrey with Daniels were nominated for Best On-Screen Duo. In 2008, Empire magazine ranked Dumb and Dumber among the 500 greatest movies of all time, placing it at number 445, a very respectable spot for a comedy of its kind. The success spawned a franchise. In 1995, ABC aired an animated series written by co-writer Bennett Yellen, though it lasted only 1 season. In 2003, the studio released a prequel, Dumb and Dumberer, When Harry Met Lloyd, but without the Farrelly brothers or Carrey and Daniels, it flopped. A true sequel finally arrived in 2014, reuniting the original team. Dumb and Dumber received mixed reviews, but performed decently at the box office. The cast's lives unfolded in very different ways. Jim Carrey went on to reinvent his career, proving his talent across multiple genres. His on-set romance with Lauren Holly led to marriage in 1996, though it lasted only a year. Holly continued to act in film and television, while Jeff Daniels, defying all predictions, not only avoided career damage, but later won 2 Emmys for dramatic roles. Not every story had a happy ending. Charles Rocket, who played villain Nicholas Andre, tragically passed away in 2005, and Terry Garr, after a long battle with multiple sclerosis, died in 2024. But there were also stories of resilience. In 1995, Karen Duffy was diagnosed with a rare chronic illness of the central nervous system, yet she turned her struggle into activism and a source of inspiration for others. Young Brady Bloom chose to leave Hollywood for a normal life, but returned 2 decades later to reprise his role as Billy in the sequel. The Farrelly brothers went on to make more successful comedies, and Peter Farrelly even won an Oscar for the biographical dramedy Green Book. Thus, a film once dismissed by studio executives as trash became a true cultural phenomenon, and one of the most beloved comedies of the 1990s. Does this Farrelly Brothers movie rank among your favorite comedies, or do you think it's just too silly?